your agenda and saw motivational speaker, and it got me a little bit stressed out. So hopefully we will be motivated by the end of this. It sounds like you guys are already doing great things. It sounds like your theme for your planning retreat is good to great, which is always exciting. Jim Collins just came out with some new information actually that someone just sent me this morning about great organizations that he studied. I was going to talk actually a little bit about that today. But it sounds like you guys are already pretty amazing in rarefied air. So what I was going to do is tell you, spend a little bit of time telling you our story about the Perot Museum, and then leave a fair amount of time hopefully at the end for some questions. Can you guys all hear me without the mic? No? Yes? Can you hear me? Okay. How many of you guys, and it's okay if the answer's no, because hopefully by the end of this the answer will be yes, but how many of you have come down to see us downtown, thank you, at the Perot Museum? Well, great. So hopefully you guys all had a good experience. How many of you are charter members? Some of you, yes, thank you. Hopefully by the end of this, you guys that haven't been there will want to come and see us. And I was visiting with some of you earlier and listening to the excitement around a field trip that I think some people that you all know came yesterday. So we've had a really exciting year at the Perot Museum. We've been open, 11 months and 6 days and like 12 hours, not that I'm counting. And it's been a really, really exciting ride. So we started years ago in Fair Park, and I'll tell you a little bit about that story now if I can figure out how to do this. So when we talk about going from good to great, it's so funny because, as you all know, you all are extremely successful business people, and so often you really don't sit down and think about how you plan to get from good to great. You might look backwards and think, we did that okay. But while you're in it, you usually have your head down and it's just about meeting those milestones. So it was fun when Chris called and said, would you do something around good to great? And I thought, I've never really thought about us that way, but it's a fun analysis to do. So for those of you, how many of you ever came and saw us in Fair Park? Some of you? So we were good in Fair Park. We had a good institution. We did a lot of good things. We were there for 75 years, and we served a lot of people in our years, but we were not great. Bless you. And one of the things that we know about North Texas is we've got great cities, we've got great corporations, we've got great people, we've got great energy, we've got an entrepreneurial spirit, and what that means is we deserve a great science museum. And so our board for years knew that we needed to provide a great institution for our community, and so that's what this project was about. It was about taking the institution that we had in Fair Park and making it great, because our mission of inspiring minds through nature and science is critical to most of your businesses and to our communities and to our country right now. How many of your businesses are dependent on engineers, science, technology, engineering, math? Most of you, I think, here probably, yes. If not, did anyone have to do any math today? Yes. Okay, well, we all know that, you guys probably know that most of our kids are not really so great in math and science right now. And not only are they not good at it, they really don't like it. And particularly the girls are not interested in it. So for us, it was critical that we went from good to great, because we've got to inspire next generation to be your workforce. Because most of you that work at companies, especially in this area, I'm quite sure that you guys could probably cite for me the numbers in your workforce gap of the engineers that you cannot identify that you know you're going to need as your workforce retires, and we don't have the kids that are graduating high school and college that are going into those engineering careers. So it was really incumbent upon our community to not just have a good science museum that was kind of fun to bring your kids to, but that we built a great institution that was going to change the way people looked at math and science. And so this is an example of, if you haven't seen our building, that is our current building on the right, and everybody always asks me, what in the heck is that thing on the side of the building? So if you've been there, you probably know it's an escalator. If you haven't been there, then it's a great opportunity to ride up on the outside of the building. That is actually a 3-story express escalator that goes to the top of the building, and it's a great way to see the city. So when I think about good to great, and I think about our organization, and I think about the things, and Jim Collins talks about some of these as well in his books, we had a cause, we had a big challenge in front of us, we knew that we needed to collaborate to be successful because we weren't going to be able to do it on our own. Change was going to be an important part of what was happening for us, and we had to have a little bit of courage, because sometimes hard things aren't that easy to do, and you have to make big decisions, and that's not always easy. So we kind of call these the 5 C's for us, and this is what helped us go from good to great. So just a little bit more about who we are. As I said, our mission is inspiring minds through nature and science. You can see what our vision here is. It's about being an extraordinary resource for our community. And one of the things that I think has been really exciting with the new institution is that we're not just about kids, we're also about adults. How many of you turn on the news and you worry about climate change, you worry about the flu season, you worry about energy policy. Yesterday we had a major vote on water. How many of you wake up in the morning and worry about those things? Most of the big things that we're facing in our lives are math and science related. And they're going to be solved by a generation of kids that are creative problem solvers. If you look at the latest OECD report that came out, the United States ranked 20th in the world in numeracy, which is numerical literacy and problem solving. And I'm sure, does anybody need to solve problems in their daily business? We all do, right? And how creative we are in being able to solve problems is really important. 20th, I bet if we went around the room, we'd barely get to 19 countries we could even think of that we'd be happy to be behind in anything. So being 20th in the world is not something we're proud of. So this isn't just about our kids, this is about building a science literate society that will be interested in buying your products, that will be interested in furthering our cause, that will be interested when they go to vote, they understand what the water proposition is. So it's about building a much more science literate community and inspiring our next generation of workforce and next generation of Nobel laureates. So that's our cause. It's about educating those future leaders. We do that in lots of different ways. And as I said, we're for learners of all ages. Did anyone happen to come spend the night with us last Friday night? Anyone's doze with the dinos? No? Okay, well if you guys are looking for something to do, you as grown-ups can still come and spend the night at the museum, so we welcome you. We do everything from programs starting at 6 months old to 60-year-old. And one of the fun things when we opened, we found out very quickly that the number, do you guys know what the #1 complaint at the museum was? Other than it was a little bit crowded? Anyone, can they guess?
Too much to see.
Parking?
Too much to see, parking. Parking was a complaint too. The #1 complaint we got was that there were too many kids in the building.
Oh.
Yep. And you know who that came from? People like us. The grown-ups that wanted to come and have a great time at the museum, who were really irritated because they really didn't want to have to shove a kid out of the way to do the robot arena. They wanted to play and learn too. So one of the things that we've done is spend a lot of time developing adult learning programs. Has anyone been to our social science events? No, we've done 4 so far. They sell out every time. We average about 1,500 people. So for those of you who are in businesses that are math and science related, I think you would be happy to know there is a community of adults who are passionately interested in nature and science. And we do 4 events a year called social science, which are for grown-ups only. You have to be 21 years old to come, and there's nothing like having a cocktail and racing a robot or racing the dinosaur or racing the cheetah and doing something like that. So we really have developed programs for learners of all ages. So we talked a little bit about the challenge. So the challenge for us is twofold. It was one, how do we solve this huge problem that our country is facing? And how do we boil that down for our community so that we can take a big problem, which is an economic challenge that's facing our country, and turn it into a local challenge and do something with that. So the big challenge for us was, how do we solve this math science problem? How do we get kids excited and engaged in math and science? The way that translated for our community was, we need to build a new museum, because every Nobel laureate that we talk to, everybody in math and science careers tells us that they had a moment when they were growing up that they walked through a science museum in another city and said, I am more curious about the world now than before I walked in the door. Whether it was Mike Brown, the Nobel laureate at the medical school, who actually just donated his Nobel Prize for all of you to see just last week. He got his start at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, where he walked through the heart exhibit, and he said it was the first time that he was exposed to these kinds of things, and he began to ask the question, why does the heart work that way? He later, as most of you know, developed the statin drugs that help us keep our cholesterol down. Pretty monumental change for the country, not to mention a huge economic advancement for the pharmaceutical companies. So we know that great leaders and great thought leaders get their start at places like museums, and we know that our kids are not getting excited. Our local kids in DISD, Richardson, you all should be very thankful. I know you do a little bit better than the local DISD schools, but generally in North Texas and Texas, we still have challenges that we need to improve on. Whoop. So our project timeline was, it depends who you talk to. This starts in 2006, because that's when we did our merger. For those of you who are familiar with us, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure, but some people know a little bit more than others, but our history was that we started as 3 institutions: the Dallas Museum of Natural History, the Science Place, and the Dallas Children's Museum. You don't hear that often about not-for-profit mergers, because as my chairman used to like to say, it turns out that despite the fact that we were lots of itty-bitty organizations, This merger was about as easy as merging Exxon and Microsoft. Not so easy, it turns out. So this history starts with that merger. For those of you who've been around in North Texas for a long time, you know that our institutions each started years before that. One of my board members likes to say that he got his start and his passion at the Natural History Museum, and he was afraid before we ever get this museum built that he actually would be in a diorama. I'm thankful to say he is not actually in a diorama, and he is still a good standing member of the board. So he would tell you that he started this project in 1985, which one of the things that should probably be in our themes, but I couldn't think of a C word for it, is persistence. Persistence definitely pays off, and that's the big part about dreaming big, is it's not always easy to get there. We started in 2006 with the merger of the three institutions. We picked an architect. We raised money. Our capital campaign was $185 million. It was an institution building campaign, not a building campaign. And what's different about that is that we weren't just building a building so we would have a new pretty piece of architecture downtown. We of course wanted to do something cool downtown, but we know that to change lives, we need to do something incredible with our mission, and that's what happens inside this building. So we wanted to have great economic impact on the downtown area and continue to drive visitors downtown. We created over 2,000 jobs with this project. So $185 million included the building, the exhibitions, the education programming, and endowment, and all the things that we need to do to set the institution up to be successful financially long term. We were incredibly fortunate that even though we were in one of the worst economic downturns of our time, we were able to raise the money and completed our campaign a year early, which allowed us to finance the building purely through contributions. It was 100% privately funded, and we never took out any debt to build the building. So it was really exciting, because what that meant is we could leverage all of the resources into the mission and into the institution, and being good fundraisers means you never stop raising money and you never stop with the ask. And we got to 185 million, and there were still a lot of people who hadn't given. So we said, we'll kick off our $30 million campaign for excellence, because we'd also spent a lot of time doing best practices around the country, and we knew that lots of great buildings had gotten built, and then they open, and everyone goes, these are kind of expensive to run. Oh, we need more money for programs. We didn't think about those things. I always say opening the building is kind of like the day you bring the baby home. It's not the end, it's the beginning, right? And for those of you who have children in your lives, the day you bring the baby home, you're not like, good luck, hope you make it to college, right? It doesn't work that way. That's really just the beginning. So for us, while we had a 10-year campaign and we had to do all these things, we knew that we had to focus on being successful long-term, which was about continuing to raise funds so we could operate with excellence as we moved forward. We moved in as a staff in September of 12, and as I said, December 1st, 2012 last year was the first day that we opened to the public. And for all of you who are entrepreneurs in the room, and I know there's a lot of them, you've probably been through that feeling where you open the doors. Anybody ever see the Peter Brady episode where he has a party and nobody really comes for a while? So, you know, you open the doors and you hope people will come, right? So we were fortunate because people have started to come. So our results so far from this project have been really wonderful, and it's been great for North Texas because it's put us on the map nationally and internationally. These are just some of the reviews from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Architectural Digest. When we were dreaming of this project, we said there would be two things that would make us feel successful. One would be that we'd build an incredible building that would make the architecture magazines and would make all of the museum magazines. And the second thing would be that one day we'd make the Wall Street Journal for also running a good business. So we built a green building that was sustainable, but when we talk about sustainability, we also talk about it from a business standpoint. So we haven't made the Wall Street Journal yet, but we are waiting. And we've had a good opening year, so we're still holding out for the Wall Street Journal, but we did have a good opening. Most importantly, how did our visitors and our customers feel about our product? They had a really positive experience. For any of you who've been, hopefully you had a good experience. Despite your age, we find that, as I said, whether you're 6 or 60, there's usually something for you to do. For anybody that's been, have you done the running exhibit? Did anyone do the running exhibit? Yes? Did any of you actually race? Did you race? Would you race?
I raced the
dinosaur. Yes. No one has beat the cheetah yet, despite a young child that I did hear on the elevator last week. We have a running exhibit, and you can race a cheetah, a dinosaur, or a few athletes. And I did overhear a child on the elevator the other day bragging to his friend how he had just beat the cheetah downstairs. I decided I was not going to ruin his day and tell him that was really not humanly possible. But it was fun for him to believe that he did. So we've had rave reviews from our visitors. And this is what's really exciting when you talk about going from good to great. So we can talk about all the amazing mission impact we've had. You all run businesses, you want to see the numbers. So here are the numbers. So the most important thing is, are we moving from good to great? Are we showing an increase in our numbers? So you can see this is our attendance. And I think for North Texas, what's really exciting, and this is in 1 year, the change for us. We are now up with Chicago, LA, Boston, Denver in terms of our attendance numbers. So North Texas has showed up, and they've showed up big. And the exciting thing about this is the message that is sent nationally, internationally, that this is a community that believes in investing in itself. It's incredibly entrepreneurial, and we can do best-in-class things. And so it's been a really incredible sales tool for our community to use. A lot of these people are coming in from out of town. We're finding out, we're hearing from all of the hotels and restaurants that they're hearing about people who are booking, as we say, heads and beds, because they're coming in to see the museum and some of the other exciting attractions downtown. So we've had a tremendous increase in traffic. If you look at it as a percent of penetration of our MSA, you can also see that we're moving up the chart, which is exciting. And actually, if you look to our left, most of those cities are actually smaller than North Texas. And so what that means is we've seen an incredible increase in our market penetration this year, which is really exciting. Our membership numbers have put us on par with also all of the major national museums. So again, we would have never dreamed that we would see ourselves up with Chicago and Boston and Denver in just 1 year. So it's been really exciting to see the increase. We just topped 47,000 household memberships. We also were looking at the metrics in our industry, so we're watching things. So the good news is they like us on site, and they also like us online. So I asked today what our numbers were on Facebook likes for those of you who are engaged in social media. This time last year, we had 1,000 Facebook likes, which the good news is last year at this time we didn't know how bad that was, but we now know. And thankfully, we were really proud of the 1,054 Facebook likes that we had. But we have been thrilled that we obviously made it to 61,000 in just a year, and every day we're continuing to climb. So when you leave, or when you're playing on your phones, checking your email and not listening, if you would just go onto Facebook for me and like us, we might be able to pick up about 50 more right now, which I would appreciate. So that's all been good news. Our building, we're using it really efficiently, so we're also running a good business, which is important. And so how that happens. So we've talked a little bit about the history, and how did we go from good to great? Well, one of the things is a lot of people, there's a huge move, social enterprise, people are talking about. Harvard's got an institute, Stanford's got an institute, everybody's talking about social innovation. Most companies are talking about the double bottom line now. How many of you guys ever use that phrase in your businesses? Which means doing good by doing well, or doing well by doing good. Well, we also are a double bottom line business, right? So in our business, no margin, no mission. The term not-for-profit means you get up and aspire to lose money every day. Does anyone here get up and aspire? No. So for us, nonprofit is a tax status, not a business plan. And so for us, it was really important to remember that it's great to want to go save the world, but if we didn't run a good business and people didn't want to come, we really couldn't save the world, and we weren't going to change kids' lives. So when I first started at the museum, and this is sort of a major mind shift, I think, in nonprofits that's happening right now, and whether it's in your businesses or in your volunteer lives, I'm sure most of you, how many of you sit on a nonprofit board other than this one? I'm sure most of you are very involved. Well, we have found over the years that people sometimes leave some of their business thoughts and say, well, it's a charity organization, so they do things differently. It's fund accounting. Have you ever heard that? It's fund accounting. That doesn't really mean anything except an excuse for nonprofit. So we aspire to make money, because if we make money, we can continue to reinvest in our business. When I first started at the museum, because I had come out of a corporate background, I sat down with one of our team members, and we were talking about it, and she said to me, this was in 2002, she said to me, you are never going to make it here. You keep using the word P&L and profit and revenue, and those are not words that we use at an organization like this. Don't you know we are a charity organization? And I said, okay, I thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate it. That's great. I said, I just wanted to let you know that on Friday, we are not going to be able to make payroll. And she looked at me and said, well, but I need to get paid. I said, but we're a charity organization. It's okay. So very quickly, our organization has come around to understand that if you can run a not-for-profit profitably, you can reinvest in your stakeholders, which are your people, your community, your mission, and continue to do good things. So for us, it's about aligning margin and mission. And so these are our 6 kind of key success factors for us. And so if you can align margin and mission appropriately, we give a lot of scholarship money away. So our goal is to make money when we can and then make sure that we're accessible to all the kids in our community that can't afford to come. So it's all about aligning margin and mission so that we can have great results. And that's what we've seen this year, as I've showed you. So for us, collaboration was one of those other C's. We found as a nonprofit organization, for everybody that I've ever known that's gone from the for-profit world to the nonprofit world, they always come and see me and we have the counseling session around, I'm going to come work for a nonprofit because I think my life will be a lot easier that way and I won't have to work as hard. I said, well, I feel like I should clarify that before you jump into the job. Really, it just means we have less resources and we have to subsidize our product by raising money, right? Because we can't really charge what our product is worth. It's not that it's really easier, so it's that we have to be more efficient with our resources. And so we knew that we needed to collaborate to be able to obtain the kinds of resources to get great, right? We are a museum that's been around for a long time, unlike the New York Museum or the Chicago Museum that have hundreds and hundreds of world-class curators. Do you know how many curators we had when we started this project? 1. Do you know how many we still have? 1. But somehow we built a great museum because we collaborated. We went with the community curator model, which meant that we reached out to UTD and to TI and all of our local partners to say, hey, who are your best thought leaders in your community, and can they come help us curate this museum so we can build a great science museum and leverage the expertise in our community, and by the way, at the same time, market for all the amazing universities, corporations, and institutions that we have in this community. So it's about internal collaboration, which was the merger, and it was about external collaboration where we work with lots of great thought leaders in the community. When we were thinking about external partnerships, this is how we thought about it. Does this look like a consulting chart to you? That's because it's a consulting chart. You can say thank you to Bain. We spent a lot of time thinking about how do you leverage those partnerships and what does that look like and what is an appropriate partnership model, whether you're not for profit or for profit, right? Thinking through those partnerships. Some are business transactions, some are content partners, and so this just gives you a little bit of an idea of how we began thinking through how we leverage the community to help us achieve our goals. And this is where we've ended up. And this is just a snapshot of some of our partners today, but it's a lot of your organizations, it's a lot of the organizations that you probably work with and volunteer for. It's been really incredible. We've really looked at the museum as a way to collaborate and bring the community together around an effort. This is one of the largest single investments in math and science education in the country right now. And that's really exciting for North Texas, and it's all because we have these amazing partners in the community. So the last thing was change. That's, as we've always told our team, that's the only thing that we can guarantee will be consistent at our organization, is that things will always be changing. And if you're not comfortable with change, this is probably not a good place for you, because we do not live in a world anymore where we can all go to work every day and say, you know, I think I'm just going to take the day off today and everything will be fine. We're moving in a world, as we know, that whether it's social media, regular media, whether it's our customers, everybody is moving faster than we are. How many of you have young children in your lives? Some of you? How many of them know how to use the iPad and all of the devices better than you? Yeah, well, I have a 5-year-old that can use all of the devices in our house far better than I can. And I discovered that no matter how hard you try to parentally lock your TV, your 8-year-old can get around every one of those things. So what we know is that the world is constantly changing, and organizations that are going to be successful have to get comfortable with change. And so we had to really think about, as we were leading through this transition, what did that mean for our team? So as you guys talk about leading through change, and you guys are the organization that's going to be moving, having an engaged board, having engaged volunteers is really, really important. The board members and your team need to be able to go out in the community and tell the story. You cannot be great if you can't give the elevator pitch when you run into somebody. If they say, hey, what else do you do besides work? And you say, I'm involved at the chamber. You've got to be able to give that pitch, and you've got to be able to talk about what you do for the organization. You've got to have an engaged board. You've got to share the vision for the future, and that for us was the biggest thing. We had to have a bold vision. We used to say, you know, go big or go home, right? So for us, we had to have a bold vision, and we needed to constantly share it, so that everybody knew on a daily basis why they were doing what we were doing. We'd have realistic expectations about how we were going to get there. Things aren't always easy. You know, it would have been nice if we could have woken up one day and had $200 million, but for those of you who've raised money, it doesn't always turn out that way. These things are hard to do, so sometimes you have to be a little more patient than you want to be. And for us, it was about managing the, does anybody have business, well, we've always done it that way syndrome. So for us, that doesn't work that well, right? We've always done it that way. Well, we're not the same business today. We don't have the same customers today that we had yesterday. So that is the way we've always done it. Did that work for us? Maybe it did, but it shouldn't necessarily be the default position. We've always got to be thinking about what is the best way to do it, not that's the way we've always done it. And then open communication channels for us was, as we talked about, important, and that's what you guys are obviously doing here today, which is talking about that shared vision. We also have, which I'm sure many of you do too, when I was at McKinsey, they used to call it the obligation to dissent. If you disagreed with something and you didn't speak up, you really couldn't complain about it later, right? So you had to, through leadership, one of the things you have to do is empower your team to be able to feel comfortable raising an issue and saying, you know what, I disagree with that, I think we should go a different way. Sometimes you agree to disagree, but people have to feel comfortable that they're in an organization where you can do that if you're going to drive change. So we learned a lot of lessons. As I talked about, change is hard. We definitely learned that. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions. Those aren't always fun. Being as transparent as possible has really been great for us. As I said, nonprofit is not a business plan and hope is not a strategy. So we can hope all day that we get a building built, and we can tell you we were a nonprofit and you should give us money because you should feel bad for us, but that doesn't usually work out that well. So we found out that we needed to really change the way we thought. Collaborate, 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 and again, back to empowering your volunteers and your team members. That was really, really important to us. And the last one on this list, and some of these are tied into Jim Collins' work that he's recently done, but the last one for us was courage. Because in a world where things are always changing, raising money is hard, there's always competition for resources, whether you're for-profit or not-for-profit. Sometimes you have to make the bold move and decide, you know what, if any of you had seen the Natural History Museum, which a lot of you had, 10 years ago, I can tell you that if any of you, which I'm happy to say I did not come see any of you and none of you laughed me out of your office, but you wouldn't have been the only one if you did. When we first started this project, we walked into a lot of business owners' offices and they said, good luck with that. We hope, good luck. You guys are never going to be able to do that. That is way too big of a vision. But because of a committed board and because of persistence and because at the end of the day, that vision and that cause was so important, our board stayed with it. And that took a lot of courage for a lot of our board members to be able to say, I'm going to go back time and time again until I can prove to people that we can do this. Because sometimes these things are hard, but they're the right thing to do for the community. So that is the last piece of, I think, how we went from good to great. And I would also tell you the last piece is that we know that, as I said, we're constantly changing. And so what we're doing today is not what we're going to be doing tomorrow. And so we're going to be constantly thinking about how we're having the same conversation about how we stay great and how we continue to get greater at our organization. So that's just a little bit about us. So thank you for your time. I don't know, is anyone more motivated now? I'm not sure. Just smile and say yes.
I think Nicole has got a few minutes. She's got to get back to Dallas, but she's willing to take some